We're here to talk about the Happy Jack Funhouse adventure that you all loved and you just cherished going through that Funhouse so much. I could tell.
It was fun.
Speedy times.
I enjoyed it. I'm not sure how much. Well, Booch, it's hard for Booch to not have a good time, so.
Booch was fermenting. You know, we're supposed to know what that means. He was fermenting.
Before we get too deep into it, though, I have an announcement something I realized yesterday. That this after party marks our 200th episode of the show overall, including everything.
What?
Sessions, after parties, obviously not Patreon stuff, but main feed.
Crap.
200 episodes today.
Congrats.
Wow.
Hooray, everybody.
Yay!
Huzzah! Huzzah!
We put up with each other for 200 episodes.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Okay.
Man, alive.
Okay. I wish I would have known. I could have prepared a little
I
something.
have to do something nice for myself tonight.
Speech! Elena, give us a speech.
Well, 2.5 years ago.
Great speech. Good job.
Yes.
Nice job, Pamela.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get into the actual Funhouse events, I did want to touch on background stuff with Jack and with your characters, just so that some of the events that happen, some of Reaver's and Jack's tauntings, will make a little more sense to the listeners when they hear this part. So, Jack's background, and this module that I found on DM's Guild, written by Remley Farr and Jeff C. Stevens, was very well written. There's just so much information, and the things that I needed to make up myself, they let me know I needed to make them up myself. They didn't just not include information. They're like, here, you need to fill in this stuff here. And so it wasn't like not everything was written out. There are things I could do and change, and they gave me options for stuff, but there wasn't anything left hanging. So I really enjoyed that. I like that.
That's good. So how does that compare to the clock tower?
The clock tower, there's a lot of conflicting information in that one. There was things that were on the map that had no reference anywhere, things that were referenced in one place but never again. And then it just was first time going from a module was confusing. First time going from that module was confusing. I didn't feel it was written as well. And I think a lot of that was also on me for not being more prepared the first time. I could have been a little more prepared and gone into stuff a little bit more and tried to realize, I didn't realize what I didn't know yet. So this time, now that I've done it before, I had a better idea that I needed to go look for that information.
Did preparing make you feel more comfortable overall? Because you seemed really comfortable from the very beginning. You said you're nervous, but
yes, I prepared a lot for this one. I prepared so much. I played it before you guys with another group of people.
I was going to say, because I remember you telling me that, and I was like, wow, I've never once pre-tested anything I've run. I always just wing it. I'd better make sure that I know what I'm doing coming into this.
Yeah. If we were just playing at the table, I wouldn't have done that, obviously. But since we were recording, I didn't want a whole bunch of pauses. I didn't want a lot of stumbles. I didn't want, give me a minute to let me go look that up stuff. I wanted
that's
to...
the stuff he can edit out.
I know, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have the answers. I wanted to make it a good experience for you guys.
There were no pauses and no ums and stumbles, you guys.
I wanted to flow well for you guys so that you could be more in it and not be constantly being dragged out by me okay, wait a second, let me find that in the book.
Yeah, I think you did a fantastic job. I mean, it was incredibly smooth.
I tried. I tried really hard. So Jack's background. And I'm just going to read it exactly how it's written. Count Strahd Vanzerevich of Barovia led a life of such infamy and violence that he forever stained the surname Vanzerevich. The unlucky others throughout the land who bear the name meet with scorn, prejudice, and in some cases violence. Such was the case for Vilma and Brendan Vanzerevich. Having made a deal with a Vistani porter to leave Barovia, the newlyweds traveled to the Forgotten Realms, where they had their first and only child, a boy born with a crooked nose and poor eyesight, Jack. Jack suffered many hardships while growing up. As one can imagine, he was often bullied because of his name and quirky nose. He also lived in poverty, his parents finding it difficult to procure meaningful jobs as Barovian immigrants. Jack eventually learned to use the infamy of his name to make a bit of coin. At first, he performed simple magic tricks in the streets next to the wooden sign that read, Von Zerevich the Magnificent. Magnificent. I can say that. His tricks weren't very good, and his stumbling and bubbling routine was often more the entertainment than the magic, so the onlookers dropped a few coins for the laughs. Jack invested his earnings, purchasing better equipment, clothing, and hiring an assistant, an old woman named Reaver, a fellow Barovian. Reaver has had much to do with Jack's current success, and she has helped him procure many of the strange beings that inhabit his signature magic attraction, his funhouse. Jack eventually dropped the Von Zerevich from the title of his act, deciding to simply call himself Jack the Magnificent. I'll get that one day. Due to the people's prejudices, this helped attendance, but not by much. As Jack and Reaver traveled the Forgotten Realms, he picked up several talents from fellow bards and performers. He learned the acts of performance makeup, tumbling, dancing, and a few sleight-of-hand tricks. Reaver revealed a knowledge for the dark arts, and tempted Jack with her forbidden secrets. That sounds a lot dirtier than it's supposed to. Jack found he had a knack for dark magic and began adding some simple spells to his act by causing ground tremors, flickering flames, furniture to move about, or a window to fly open at just the right time to add even more wonder to his acts. Jack wanted to learn more magic, and Reaver was happy to oblige. The old Barovian, actually a Vistani witch, divulged her spellbinding secrets to Jack, twisting his mind towards a madness that nothing could halt. Jack's act eventually turned into a grand traveling amusement which he named Happy Jack's Funhouse. Following his success, the man is now hardly ever seen without his performance makeup. In his art, Jack found the way to hide his true self. That once pestered and bullied boy who was robbed of an innocent childhood, the persecuted boy inside is now forever hidden, caked behind a pale bandage of grease paint and color. Many of the occupants of Jack's funhouse joined Jack willingly at Reaver's behest, as they too wanted to escape ridicule, the shame for what they were. Jack saw them as amazing creatures, wonders of the world. They would have a home and fear no more. And it also says that just before the children's appeared, Jack's mind finally broke. It says, little did the village know that Happy Jack was about to succumb to a horrible plot woven by his mentor, Reaver. The old hag, disguised as a carnival worker, had been twisting Jack's mind for years. Jack broke a day ago. His mind and body believed he needed a child's laughter to make him happy, to feel alive. Jack has abducted many of the children in the village, keeping them entertained in the lower level of his funhouse.
It's all Reaver's fault.
Exactly.
Dang.
I almost feel bad for Jack.
Almost.
Yeah. I mean,
You
he's
tried to
just
fucking eat
trying his best.
Well, yeah, but, you know.
You were trying to take his children.
Uh-huh. And eat them.
That is a lot of effort to actually make Jack a somewhat sympathetic villain for a D&D module.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good. I'm pretty impressed. Like, most of the time, it's just sort of like, whatever.
He's just misunderstood. Bill always says it.
Exactly. Bill's right in this one instance.
I mean,
I'll take it.
It's too bad how difficult that kind of backstory is to portray in, the confinements of a
subtext,
one shot.
yeah.
Like, how do you,
Right.
without that exact exposition dump from somebody, like, right? Like,
Exactly.
If you had found his bedroom, which you guys bypassed,
Gross.
there were more clues in there. They wouldn't have given you everything that I just read, but there were more clues in there as to more of a sadness to him.
Was his
Right.
bedroom the employees only thing I wanted to go into?
No, it was on the second floor, the lower floor. What you didn't miss by going to the employees only was a whole bunch of closets.
But I also wanted to go to the basement because I said that's where the prisoners would be. So,
Would knowing that backstory have changed anything that happened? I mean, when we got to the end and he was going to eat children and stuff.
Yeah,
you might go,
exactly.
well, yeah, I feel bad for the crazy son of a bitch we got to kill, but
even if we had found Reaver.
I really wish I had been recording myself listening to that last episode, because when that happened, I should have known something was going to happen like that.
You
but I was
lost
like,
full.
oh shit! My dog looked at me like, what is going on? He's eating children.
No, but these children were making a living wage, apparently.
They were just employees.
that's right.
Well, that's another thing I was wondering if you guys understood what was going on with that, the children versus the adult versions of the children.
Yeah.
Not really. I assume it's something similar that happened to Jacques. Like this, somehow the childhood has been separated from them, and I guess all that's left is these adult versions or something. I don't know. Is that kind of what it was?
I thought there was like a time warp.
I think initially when we saw the posters, I thought time is different here, and they've grown up in this funhouse.
Right.
And that's what I originally thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I tried a couple other times to rip the childhood out of y'all with Jack there in the end, and you all succeeded in your save, so nobody else got their childhood ripped out. But that is exactly what happened. He ripped the childhood out of Jacques. He ripped the adulthoods out of the children. So as long as their adult versions were separate, they could never grow up. So technically, those children that you saved will forever be children, because the adult versions were not saved.
Okay,
and we killed a bunch of them.
That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, quite frankly, that makes zero sense. How can you pull the adulthood out of a child? Adulthood doesn't exist. It doesn't make a lick of sense.
Well,
but I like
and
it.
if you wanted them to stay children, why didn't he just go ahead and kill the adult versions then?
Well, you needed
someone
the
had to power the energy on the
exactly. Yeah,
he needed somebody to ride that Peloton.
He needed the employees. I told you, he needed the employees.
You were both right and wrong, and all of it was wrong, really. I was thinking if we had had more time, if like this was just a campaign, like, and not an audio show that you're trying to do in a certain amount of time, would we have circled back to Reaver? Because I remember when we found her journal, it seemed very much like she was manipulating Jack in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really sure when I was listening to the last episode whether or not that would come back into play. In the module, maybe this is spoilers for someone who wants to run it, but...
She definitely was controlling Jack. That was one of my regrets. I wish I hadn't had her vanish on you. I wish I had let you finish out that fight. Because if she died, then you all would have had to roll to see whether or not she was going to take up inhabitants in your brain. And she wouldn't be able to control you or anything, but she would talk to you and try and influence your thoughts.
What would that be like, Bill?
Crazy.
That's the only word.
That would have been awesome.
Sporulating.
A sack that talks to you? Or,
it makes sense that she ran. Like, yeah, she's getting, like, who wouldn't? I mean, she's getting pretty beat down. She was paralyzed there for a few rounds. Like, I mean, it makes sense that she ran. But obviously, like, how much of that Funhouse did we actually not get to? Because, again, yeah, we were... I mean, I think ideally we probably would have scheduled, like, 2 days to play this over. And maybe we would have gotten to so much more. And unfortunately, Andrew had to leave before the finale, which, of course, why Belric wasn't in the final episode. And you kind of we had to shoot you through the portal there with the t-shirt gun. But,
if I'm going to go out, though, that's the way to go out.
That's a pretty good way.
Everyone loves a t-shirt gun.
If you can choose, that's it.
I blame the flat tire from earlier in the day. If I had been able to show up when I was supposed to. If Woody had gone straight to the police, this would never have happened. But
before we get into all that, why don't you all go over your backstories a little bit so that the tauntings that Reaver and Jack had make a little more sense to people? Who wants to start?
How in depth do you want me to go into?
Let's let that PP. Why don't you get yours? Is obviously I think I don't. Although I haven't heard Belric's, but I've heard everyone else's, and Pippi's is like the most fleshed out for sure.
The thing about
as usual
backstories,
for John
is John loves them.
John loves to write them.
John loves writing backstories.
Right.
John writes pages of them.
it's more for me to get into the character of, like, when people like creating characters, right? They like to go look at pictures, and for me it's just the backstory. But yeah, this is way too much for what came out for Pippi. Matter of fact, most things that I wanted to do didn't come out in this one shot. But so you want me to just
do it? Give us an overview.
So favorite childhood memory type. So what, I can't remember exactly what things that you picked on with Pippi a little bit, but vaguely her favorite childhood memory was enjoying. She was in a traveling caravan and the vacations she had on the beach with her brothers and sisters.
Reaver said, "Is what has died truly dead?"
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Are you feeling a bit under the water?"
Okay, so
So you want to explain those?
sure. So let me look down through here real quick to see which things you were hitting on here. So that would be
Right. And while you're looking, of course, before we played, Emily gave us each this kind of questionnaire of info we were to fill out for her, to submit to her for her to use. So this is what we're reading for.
It's like before
Right.
you go
Those
on a
unfamiliar.
reality show, like at the psych evaluation, quote unquote, where they're like, what's your greatest fear? So then they can hit you with it later in that reality show to see you overcome.
Is that what it's like?
Like fear factor, like whatever, right? Anyway.
so yeah. I mean, it's sort of all interweaves here with Pippi. So she worst childhood memory was she was their family, a caravan was attacked by brigands when she was 10 years old. Her father tried to protect us but was knocked unconscious. When he awoke, he suffered bouts of rage and would lash out towards the children and their mother, and he'd become very depressed, confused, and could barely speak. This went on for months until one night he just disappeared and he was never seen again. And she assumes her father's dead. So I assume that's what you were sort of picking on a little bit
dark.
there.
Frick.
Yeah, she had a tough childhood. Worst adult memory, let's see, I had a thing up here. Favorite adult memory, she met her true love named Alexi when in training alchemy school. She would spend time they would spend time together in a hidden treehouse in the veiled forest. It was a beautiful, peaceful time. The worst adult memory is to sort of kill all that. When she returned to alchemy school after a long break, she found Alexi in the arms of another woman. He said it meant nothing, but she saw the guilt and shame in his face, and she left school that day never to return. So just trying to balance out, the happy and the sadness.
Is that why she's such a shitty alchemist?
She didn't really get to do a lot of alchemy.
Boom,
Yeah.
gunshots fired.
I mean, she could hit a goddamn bronze armor bard.
That's true. I mean, I imagine to do a lot of tinkering and things like that with
Yeah.
her, but it never really came up. But I think you're hitting Emily on the things that scared you the most as a child for the water thing. When I was very little, I was crossing the Timor River on a ferry. The boat was long but not very wide, so it was unstable in the swift current that day. The boat shifted, throwing myself and 3 other children into the Timor. The undercurrent was strong and we were all pulled under. I remember everything going black and breathing lungs full of water. I woke on a small boat miles down the river from the ferry. A fisherman had seen me floating in the water and pulled me aboard, and by some miracle coughed up the water and regained consciousness. None of the other children survived. To this day, I have a fear of deep water and being submerged. So that was the dark memory, which I think that's what they were poking on.
As John's reading that whole thing and like not taking a breath, I'm like, this is where it's John versus I fell off a boat, I almost drowned.
Yeah. And there's more, but I think that hit on everything that sort of came up for Pippi. So Pippi is really trying to be a very positive, influential, but she's very, unsure of herself. So she overcompensates was the idea. I can help you. Let me help you out. Let me be that person, and then not do a very good job at things.
You didn't get
inside
enough corn
she's-
dogs. That was your first mistake.
That's right. So yeah, that's Pippi. And my regret is I should have never did that voice. But that's okay.
So Andrew Big Belrick got told by Reaver, how big is big enough? And also, do you feel a crawling sensation on your skin? 8 tiny little legs moving all around.
Blah. Yeah, so I didn't go quite as deep. So yeah, the little legs thing was from one of his worst childhood memories. Belrick, there was a small grove near where he lived, and he used to love and go and play there. And he fell asleep there once and woke up completely covered in spiders. So he absolutely cannot stand spiders, and probably like little soft touches like that would probably drive him nuts as well. And of course, as we found out during the show, Big Belrick just wants to be big. That's why he learned how to, be the runic knight, just so he could get tall. And like one of his favorite childhood memories was he had a uncle Ibsis, who used to stand him on his shoulders so he could see everything and be tall. And that's kind of his motivation for an awful lot of things. He's got a height envy for everybody, which, made most of this group like really a great fit for him because a lot of people were pretty short.
Oh, true.
Yes. I did appreciate finding Yared the stone turtle. For anybody who's listened to the Wizard and Lizards podcast, there was a turtle named Yared who met a horrible, horrible end. And so when I did the backstory, I did include his childhood best friend was a turtle named Yared, who turned out to be a rock. But that rock became helpful because it made an excellent missile aimed at the heads of kids who used to tease him. So that's Belric.
And Bill, Booch heard mushrooms grow and mushrooms die. And also, only one small spark is needed to create an inferno.
Yeah. So, the one small spark is one of Booch's biggest fears. Because fire is perhaps one of the most threatening things for his woodland friends and just the forest that he loves. So he's terrified of fire and wildfires. And then his mushrooms, or his spore babies as he calls them, play a big role in his character and what he's interested in, what he values. So that's been something that he has been very, very perhaps obsessed with since a very young age. One of his worst memories was the first time he was able to successfully sporulate some of his spore babies on his shells. So he got some of these mushrooms to grow on his shell, didn't realize that was even possible. And then he was out adventuring deep into the forest and sort of wasn't paying attention to the time of day, didn't have enough time to make it back before nightfall, and didn't do a good job of finding shelter. And it poured rain that night, and that destroyed the spore babies that he had successfully grown on his shell.
Don't you have your own shelter?
Well, I do, but
There was no shelter for the spore babies.
I know. I got
Yes.
it. I had to.
so
Well, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
But
Yes, I did.
Really, what the shell?
And your best friend, your best bird friend, Cackle or Crackle or whatever the hell his name was.
well,
your best
yeah,
friend.
his name was supposed to be Crackle, but it ended
What
up
did
being
you-
Cackle.
You're a really good role player.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a crow that I had known in my childhood, whose name was Crackle, also known as Cackle, and one of my worst childhood memories was him eating some mushrooms that perhaps were a particular variety of mushrooms he should not have eaten. Got very, very sick, and Booch, being a druid, is usually pretty good at tending to animals, but there was nothing I could do. He didn't die, but he was very, very sick for quite a few days, and I was worried that he was going to die until he finally kind of turned the corner and recovered.
he didn't even die.
Nope,
Lame.
he did not.
Come on.
He lived happily ever after in the forest.
Elena, Pam heard beware the scarves that bind you. And do those around you really need you?
Okay, so the scarves that bind you, I thought you said stars.
Oh, really?
So it wasn't even like a connection that I made until you literally just said that, because even listening back, I thought I heard stars. But that's obviously a reference to the one shot where my scarf got stuck in the gears and whatever.
Yeah.
And that was like my cherished present from my daughter or whatever. And then basing Pam, sort of her accent and personality, off of my own mother, like literally the most gut-wrenching thing would be for my mother to not be needed or wanted. And so like that was like a pretty deep and complex fear, but especially being like older and like children and all, like that was a good one. That shook me.
Empty nesting.
But yeah, I was filling this out as myself, sort of, because I don't know my mom's personal childhood memories. And then I was like, wow, I have a lame childhood. So those were good ones to choose.
And then Leland, Jacques heard every whip has its weakness. And not everyone can be whipped into shape because your backstory was very whip-focused.
Whip-centric.
Well, yeah, that was from Rira. I mean, Jacques got a lot from little Jacques. I mean, being the only one that had childhood problems.
Yes.
There was a lot of taunting from that little bastard. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, my worst. Okay, the whip weakness. That was basically the thing that scared Jacques most as a child is stories about witches immune to whips. So Reaver was like literally little Jacques' worst nightmare. And the thing that scared him most now are real life witches immune to whips. So Jacques was just really scared fighting Reaver. What was
You want to talk about the whip fairy?
Oh, the whip fairy. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that whole thing.
That's why you got the
What?
little silver wing.
Yeah. Poor Jacques. Worst adult
Poor Jacques.
memory was he killed the whip fairy. More of a misunderstanding than anything. It was like there was some erotic asphyxiation going on. As a story for another time. But long short, whip fairy dead by Jacques' hand. Even though the whip fairy was very kind to him most of his life.
Goblin
Very
on fairy
kind.
action. All right.
Very kind.
That was not the turn I expected.
I think that was episode 2 where I found those wings, or part 2, and then like there was a Jacques had a tirade, mumbling to himself, and at the end of it, Elena was just like, "I have no idea what you just said."
Yes.
Because you started, like, literally the whip fairy came out of nowhere.
I didn't see that explanation coming, but I'm also not really surprised.
That's what the whip fairy said.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Moving right along.
So to answer the earlier question, what did you miss in the Funhouse? So on the first level, if you had gone down the employee hallway, which was just a simple lock, you could have easily picked or broken the door.
Told you guys.
Sounds complicated.
It was a lot of closets. There was another one of the adult aspects of one of the children was in there. And then just
Lots of platinum,
couple-
probably.
storerooms.
No.
And a lot more crap you could have found. So all the crap that you found, the reason I told you to keep track of what you found was to give to the Stitchling to make different things. That was the whole point of all of it. The other thing that you missed was in the top right corner of the whole thing. So like northeast of that center circle room, there was a dunking booth, and one of the there was another child in there, another adult aspect, and there was 3 booths, and the third booth had rejuvenation water in it, so Jacques could have gotten his year back.
Oh.
It would make you younger again, as long as it's in the booth. If you try to take it out of the booth, it doesn't work anymore.
Interesting.
And then north of the ball pit were just more hallways, and in one of the closets, in one of the closets was a dress-up suit, like a mascot suit of Jacques. God damn it.
Wait, who?
Jack, the clown. And since Booch had fallen victim to that Crown of Madness earlier, he would have seen that. If he had seen that, he would have been compelled to attack it. And then on the second floor, and there were some things I left out just because we did it all in one day, and if we had broken it up into maybe 2 recordings or something, which is what I will suggest next time we do something like this, because one day was...
It was pretty long.
I was wiped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was long.
There were things that I cut out, like in the mirror maze, there was a mirror that had a juvenile green dragon in it that was trapped inside the mirror, and you could have freed him because in there was a closet within the mirror maze that had a mirror in it that was like one of those freestanding dressing mirror kind of things, and there's a portal to another realm in that mirror. So if you've been able to get that portal mirror up to the dragon's mirror, he could have left his mirror and gone into that and been free and happy.
would there be some benefit that we would have got from doing that, or just personal
No,
satisfaction?
just happy feelings. Yeah.
Just happy feelings.
We would have gained 3 levels at the end of the adventure.
Yes.
100 platinum.
Your hearts grew 3 sizes for that.
Only Big Belrix when he touched his rune symbols.
Yes, there were sections of the mirror maze that you missed. There was in one part of it a poster of Happy Jack that if you had come near it would have come to life, and if you had taunted it or spoken bad about it or anything like that, it would have attacked you. The poster would have attacked you.
Did the other group that you ran through this with prior, did they do all of those things, or did they miss any of them?
They actually, so they had a Twirtle also. Taco Maniac played a Twirtle, and
Nice.
he got bitten by Bubby. So he was a were-hippo Twirtle. And
Okay.
he just started to bust through doors. Any door he saw, he just ran through. So they went through the employee entrance, and they went through all those closets. And they also did not see the poster. They did see the dragon. And then they made their way back around and came back to the front entrance to see the
So
ladder,
nobody let the
tilting
dragon
ladders.
go then?
They did. They did let
Oh,
the
they
dragon
did?
go.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Really? I feel like that's a difficult little puzzle to solve, though. Like, how do you know to put the mirror up?
Their DM gave them a lot of hints.
Ah. Okay.
Who
They-
DM'd for them? Because
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
the hints.
Well,
They
Emily
did not
gave us
see
some
the
hints.
balloon. They did
Oh,
not see
okay.
the balloon room at all. They didn't go in there.
Well, see, the balloon room was much better than the dragon.
Yeah, I agree.
Then on the lower floor, underneath where the dunking booths were, there was a room that had water that was seeping in it that you guys didn't see. And Happy Jack's room you didn't see. And there was a lot of information that you could have gleaned in there.
Okay.
Then also, I skipped a whole thing. There's a whole thing with the Am Viper, which is one of my regrets. I wish I had in the very first room where I told you all those posters with all the kids and
Yeah.
what their adult aspects were. I wish I had said that there were posters for the Am Viper, the Were Hippo, and the Immortal Pig. Because then you would have had a better idea what the Am Viper was, and you probably would have reacted quite differently to the snake scream and all that information about it.
True.
But then there was a whole thing with the Am Viper turns people into, if she can attack you and poison you, she turns you into a cluster of snakes. So there's a whole bunch of Vistani people in a room in the lower level that are just the snake council. Just hundreds and hundreds of snakes. And I could have had Booch hear them or somehow be aware of them, but it was late in the day and I'm like,
That's
I'm
legitimately
just gonna
scary.
cut
I
that
hate
out.
snakes so much.
Snakes
Why
are
did it
not
have to be
scary.
snakes?
Bill loves snakes, but yeah.
And then if you
it's-
had killed the Am Viper, if you had actually killed her, all those snakes would have reverted to human form in that small room.
Okay,
Unless you had been able
okay.
to get them out
Oh.
of that room
Squished.
first and out of the funhouse. Yeah, it would not have been good.
So she was
you
like,
just hear
"Next."
crunching and squishing and
Yeah.
screaming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they just
closet
scream-
full of just
Yeah,
guts.
it's 1,000 voices screaming and cut short all at once.
Oh boy. And then just oozing
The
out
all
underneath
around
the
closet.
If
door.
we'd finished popping all those green balloons, probably would have done it in.
It wouldn't have been good. It would have been a lot of damage, yes. So basically, that's really... There was a petting zoo that was no longer used downstairs.
So that's pretty elaborate for. Well, I guess it
Right.
really wasn't considered a one shot, right? It was a short adventure.
Yeah, it's more of a side quest kind of thing, I think, is what it was meant to
Right.
be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could easily play this whole thing like across perhaps even 3 sessions. Mm-hmm.
I
If
would
you
think
wanted
so,
to really fully explore it.
Now, is the petting zoo for animals or for children who are turned into animals?
Special animals. That's where the dragon originally was. Like his mirror that he's trapped in was the ceiling of the petting zoo.
Okay.
The floor and the mirror maze with the ceiling of the petting zoo and stuff like that.
The problem with timing on these one shots is some people can just walk across ladders and it takes about 30 seconds. Others can spend an hour
Yeah.
trying to get across the ladder.
Yeah.
I think also if you were running it over several days, like the damage that we were incurring, or some of us who were having ladder issues were incurring, you stop. Like, okay, we're going to take a long rest here because
Yes.
I don't want to die by spinning room. So
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then also because of that, there were a lot of abilities that the adult aspects had that I didn't even use. And then also, I completely forgot about this one. I would have used it. Reaver had Everard's black tentacles.
Oh,
That
As a
would have been
spell.
rough in that hallway.
that brings
Yeah.
back bad memories.
The cool thing
Yeah.
about this one shot, Em, was you felt like, I feel and I could tell that you were so prepared that like if and when you wanted to skip things, it wasn't like you just went with it, and we wouldn't have known any different, right? So
yeah,
Right.
it, it felt very, very seamless.
it was
which
still
I think,
really good,
like you're saying,
Okay.
is a consequence of M being
right?
extremely well prepared.
Yeah,
Because I didn't, like, you guys could have gone anywhere, so I had to know the whole thing since we were doing it in one day. Also, if we had broken it up, I might not have, like, I could have just tried to know the first floor and not have to know the second floor. But then there were ways for you guys to get down to that second floor. Every one of those trapdoors in the floor that you saw, they went down. There was a 5-foot square that went down, but then there was a 1-inch diameter tunnel that went off it. That's what how the snakes got around the whole funhouse, through all those 1-inch tunnels were all over the place throughout there. But one of you could have potentially turned into something that could have fit in there and gone through. And then some of them went down to open places where you could have gotten out. Like there was one that came down by the slide. You could have
Interesting.
gone down and gone straight to the slide.
You
See,
never know.
That always scares me. Like, as a wizard, there are ways that you could turn into a very small creature to go scouting. And as a druid, there's a handful of different ways you can pull that off. But then you're all by yourself. So, like, what if you run into a terrible situation? It always, like, I'm always very reluctant to do that.
Or somebody steps on you.
Right?
Yeah.
Squished underfoot. What a way to go.
It's better than squished in a closet with 1,000 snakes turned people.
I suppose.
That seems like the worst way to go, really.
It's funny in most of the senses of the word how light the episode was, considering like how horrifying most of this crap is. All of the things we found, a lot of it was pretty terrible, and there was more terrible things to find. But I felt like everybody, like we all played it really light, and I actually think that was a really good balance, because I think otherwise, I mean, if you like dark and grim, it could have gone really dark and really grim, as John's backstory proves. But
Yes.
ultimately, I feel like we were just having a good time, and I think also that reflects what M did, being so prepared, is it was so seamless, like we could just roll with it. So it never really felt like you didn't see the strings behind the Muppets. So
Yeah.
Have you ever played End of the World? That's dark and grim.
yeah,
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
actually,
I ran that one shot recently. So
about
Oh, yeah.
that.
Our characters were just so ridiculously fantastical that
And
how
not
could it have
yeah.
been played any other way? Like, I mean, they're all just ridiculous. I mean, we each have our own aspect that is just like so overblown, and the focus is like on that it's hard to deviate from anything but that. Like, Jacques can't be serious. Like, how is he supposed to be serious? Like, he can't be.
It's true. Very whip-centric.
Yeah, very whip-centric. How do you be serious? Like, he can't be serious.
Yeah, I read all the backstories. Like, I got Elena's first, and I got John's and Big Belarus and Booch, and then I get Jacques, and I'm like, what the heck?
DMs are always weird, Can't rein them in.
listen, when you get the opportunity to kind of just go, I imagine most DMs I know who then play, like I see them kind of.
Well, yeah, he's like, my
Go nuts.
backstory is going to be what I want it to be in the moment as I make it up.
Which is great. It brought a lot for me to be able to pick on. That's for sure. Like, I didn't write down any of the stuff that little Jacques and Jack said at the end. That was all. I had your backstories pulled up, and I just quickly glance at it and say something.
Yeah, like Toby. Fucking Toby.
Yeah.
Toby's the worst.
So, Leland, how did it feel for you to give up control again?
Oh yeah, I mean,
This is
I
the
like
third
playing.
time now.
Yeah, no, I like being a player. Obviously, I prefer being a DM, but like Elena says, like I like making stupid ass characters, and so I have fun playing them, right? So it's good. It was good. And you were
Can you squeeze another class in there on Jock?
well, I don't know if his
Are you
stats.
tapped out?
I don't know if his stats can really handle a 6th class there, but
But when you decide to choose those hit dies to get your hit points back on a long rest, you do have a pretty significant selection.
Where there's a whip,
no way.
there's a way.
unfortunately, he doesn't
Exactly.
have the strength to be a barbarian. Otherwise, I'd have one of each hit die. I could just have my choice.
I mean, just because you don't, I guess, according to rules, you couldn't do it. But
Yeah.
to the right DM, if you convince them of your ridiculous backstory, which is ridiculous.
What do you need a 13 in the
Strength,
stat
I
to
think,
be
yeah.
that?
Or maybe strength and con for the barbarian. I
mean,
know. Yeah.
You originally had a backstory to support like the triple class or quadruple or whatever, but I don't know how to defend your quintuple class.
His name literally translates to Jack of all trades. That's all that you need.
That's all you need. You don't need paragraphs, people.
No, no. I mean, he's adopted. His adopted mom gave him his whips, and his siblings are very proficient in their own area, and he wanted to emulate his siblings.
Yeah, well, astrophysics is a little different than whips, but we'll take it. It's fine.
Yeah, but it's the same theory. It's the same practice. In
One of
practice,
them's
Yes.
a rocket surgeon, I'm pretty sure, so.
It all comes out in the wash.
I'm trying to figure out astrophysics and whips, but you know what? I'm not going to say.
Well,
I'm
when
not
you
gonna
curl a whip, it's like circular like a planetoid. And then from
I think I
there,
specifically
it's really
said I
easy.
wasn't going to ask.
You don't need to.
So did anybody have a part of the Funhouse they liked the most?
The pig. The pig was great.
Oink Fat. Oink Fat the pig. So when I played with the other group, Britt played, and she was a druid as well.
Yeah.
And she found Oink Fat and from somewhere produced a baby Bjorn and carried Oink Fat on her front around with her the rest of the Funhouse.
That's amazing.
And she tried to save him.
I mean, honestly, I think I like watching everyone else fail at those spinning things.
The tunnels.
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah,
satisfying.
having a huge, heavy shell on your back certainly is not advantageous for those sorts of things.
I like the balloon room.
Yeah, the balloon room was fun.
Yeah,
Balloon room was fun. And the ballroom. Actually, both of the, not the ballroom, but the room where the ball was flying out and our fisherman friend. Like those were interesting.
The spinning platform.
Yeah.
You guys weren't in there long enough for the platform to get up to speed, because then you would be like stuck to the wall. You know those carnival rides where you're like stuck on the wall?
That's where
Yeah.
I thought it was going, but
Yeah.
You know,
Didn't let
and
it
we
go
killed-
long enough.
we killed them hard.
I was like,
So-
I'm out. I just kept going.
I almost had Reaver reappear in there.
Oh, gosh.
But I knew you all were down low on hit points, and I thought I probably shouldn't.
Just to cackle and torture us and disappear again would be.
No, she probably would have killed one of you.
Well, yeah, we didn't have to fight, is what I'm saying.
I actually
no,
liked
she
the final fight with Happy Jack the best. That was really great. Mostly because Little Jock was there. That was really fun to get to role play.
Yeah, that was really fun to listen to. That episode was a lot of fun to listen to, and just the way you guys worked through the stitchling and what she was going to produce, and then to like the way that the alternate reality got set up, and that whole fight was really it seemed like a lot of fun. I was fantastically jealous the entire time. I was like, I would have done this.
Go kick your car tire real quick and
Yeah,
come
I'm
back.
serious.
Make you feel better.
There are two options for where that could have happened. So where I took you was the basic Barovia, where there wasn't, like, it was just the meadow or whatever with the tree. Mm-hmm. I could have also taken you to, like, a Candyland Barovia, where there were gumdrops and candy canes coming out of the ground, and things could have, like, popped up from underneath you and caused all kinds of havoc. But I felt overwhelmed by having to manage all that, so I'm like, no, we're going basic. So I hope that doesn't disappoint you knowing about
Listen,
that. But
you
it
put us in
was
a
little too
field.
much
We're
for
in a
me.
field. We don't know that there's another alternate Candyland. You know, that's the cool thing about DMing, right?
Yeah.
We don't know.
And then they wrote so many different variations for Jack. There were so many different powers I chose for him. Like, I went through and said I want him to have this and other things. Like, eating of the kids was one of the variants. That was just something that they offered to say, if you want to make Jack a little more powerful, have him do this.
You would choose that.
I thought it was pretty cool.
It was a good choice. It was scary, man. Oh.
And then you put them to sleep and made them easy
That was
targets.
a good move.
Yeah, well, Pam's always trying to be helpful.
Do you have any part of the Funhouse that you did not like? What was your least favorite?
Ladders.
That's what I enjoyed.
You can't make a roll. They'll kill you.
It was when Andrew left, like, I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, because we kind of knew that he had a heart out and, like, just trying to work it. Like, you did a good job working it in there, but, like, I was like, oh.
Oh, thanks. I was bummed.
Yeah, I
So-
felt bummed. The rest of it was, like, just entertaining in my mind.
I really enjoyed getting taken out by a t-shirt. And what was really funny about it is that's the second halfling I've had that has ended up with some sort of souvenir from some sort of alternate reality, like, amusement park thing. I have a halfling rogue named Corvus, and one of the first adventures I played, the DM who is the DM on Wizards and Lizards, but this was not a game for that. We went to a place called Disneyland. So it was all, like, Disney themed, but, like, not. And one of the first things I did was find, I wanted an item of clothing. You know, I needed a souvenir. The only thing I could find that fit me was a bib. But Chesky actually said, as long as you're wearing it, it's so distracting that you get a +1 on AC. So Corpus still has that bib. And he wears it proudly, and it says Disneyland on it. So now I have halflings, because Big Belric, if he ever makes an appearance, will be wearing that t-shirt. I mean, he died for it, so...
I can't remember, but did we say what was on the t-shirt?
Happy Jack's face.
Happy Jack's face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because
Happy
you
Jack's
used
face,
it.
okay.
You
It's
used
the Happy
it,
Jack hole.
That's right.
Use it to activate the portal
Yeah.
with a mirror that somebody just happened to pick up.
Right. That stitching list, like, there's a lot of stuff. A lot of things we could have made that would have made that little final fight, like, easier for us, obviously, too, right? Because
Right.
of all of
Yeah.
Jack's resistances and stuff like that.
Yeah, you could have had her made other stuff.
Yeah, but we didn't
We
have
didn't
the
have a
shit,
lot of the
so
items.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were
there wasn't a single other thing we had on us that we could have had her made
Oh, really?
at
I
the
didn't
time.
know.
We would have had to go and look
yeah,
for
'cause-
other stuff.
Yeah.
You missed, like, almost all of the closets.
Well,
Right.
had
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
crap
exactly.
you could find.
Pam wanted to go to the closets.
Well,
Freaking listen to Mom.
we didn't have another 5 hours of exploration
Listen,
time. So
Mom knows how to go shopping and get exactly what her kids need. Okay?
There were several places we probably could have gotten a severed head. But
That's true.
That is true.
Oh, gosh.
once we embraced these kids don't want to be saved, we're going to kill them all. It was nice that we were able to, or that you were able to save them at the end, because I was sort of like, showing back up to this village after this is going to be
Yeah.
really awkward. Yeah, so we saw your kids, but they were old and assholes, so we killed them?
Yeah.
So we're sorry.
Your kids
Except,
don't
you know what,
wanna
if you
be
go
saved.
back
Here's
in,
what
there's a somebody's kid is on a stationary bike.
Right.
Good luck getting her off it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
she will
not
chop
sorry.
you up with her cleaver, man.
Yeah. So I guess what we've learned is always take severed heads because you never know when they're going to come in handy.
I mean,
Right?
we usually have a few severed heads in our bags of holding.
They're still attached to dead
True,
bodies.
we could sever them.
see, that's just that's the shelf of opportunity of severed heads,
Yes.
less than the
Yes,
shelf
yes,
of
yes.
shame of severed heads.
That's right.
Next time Shaft sees a severed head, just put it in the bag.
That's right. There may be some in there. You guys don't know what's in that bag.
That's You did
I mean,
just buy it, so I don't know where you would have gotten a stash of stuff.
The Stitchling's a really cool entity, like, as a concept. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it too.
I
Yeah.
thought for sure we were gonna have to kill it. I was ready for that.
I was so worried you were going to attack.
Was there any other way to get to Jack?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you had gone to his room, like you would have, if the Stitchling hadn't opened the portal for you, I assume you would have continued exploring. You would have eventually found his room, and in
Right.
there is another portal to Barovia.
Was it down on the same level? Because we took the slide all the way down.
Oh, right.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the lower level.
Okay.
It's in the bottom right corner.
Okay.
A lot of the hallways on that second floor looked like they were blocked with the sores.
Yeah, those planar sores, they actually is supposed to be random where they spit you out. And I did that with the first group. I rolled a die and randomly spit people out because I think 3 of them went through them. And it just split the party so much and caused a lot more extra time trying to get them all back
Sounds
together and
awful.
having to jump from person to person.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, no, for the podcast, you're all going to the same place if you go through a sore.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Booch goes through first and he gets to spend 15 minutes looking down doors while we're all taking the longest slide ride ever, apparently.
I like the slide.
So did I, but it took fucking forever. With Booch is just taking his slow-ass turtle time all over the place.
I mean, slow and steady.
Wins the race. Yeah.
We
He's
all
not a
know
hare.
that fable.
Come on.
Jacques the hare. He's the jack of all hares.
Leland, how happy were you to get to use Tensor's floating disc?
Oh yeah, it was a quiet satisfaction that I greatly enjoyed.
I kind of hated that it was working.
It was actually pretty handy.
Because I
And
didn't want
Andrew
that.
goes, I got that reference.
Right?
It's a good spell, okay? Just when you get a ring of floating disc from your dungeon master, just
Agree to
use the fucking thing.
disagree. I mean,
I love how much you hate it.
I like
It
my
just
amulet
brings me
better.
joy.
I get an extra channel from my amulet. Like, come on.
But what about a floating
That's
disc?
pretty nice.
But a floating disc.
Listen, it's very useful to carry things. So, and people.
So when you guys were outside the funhouse, when you said something bad about the funhouse, Reaver was supposed to have attacked. So she should have attacked outside, along with the monkey that was there. And I added the parrot for obvious reasons.
Yep.
Then when you were inside and you were fighting against Zhao Li, the one with the lighting headdress, and she kept yelling at you to be quiet, anytime you spoke above a whisper, she was supposed to do psychic damage to you.
Oh,
Crap.
And Lucy had flour that she was supposed to throw, and I don't even remember what the flower was supposed to do to you.
eventually.
Booch likes flowers.
Not flowers. Flour. Baking flour. Who else did you go up against?
Jeez. Okay. So this is like, was this made for characters our level?
Yeah.
And it was that difficult.
Yeah. That's why I had you guys bump up to 5th.
One shots and or like you're saying, this isn't necessarily a one shot, but like a short adventure. They're often pretty deadly, in my experience, which is limited, but yeah.
In my very limited experience. People trying to kill me.
It's a dungeon crawl. It's a dungeon crawl, right? It's not really meant to be a campaign, an
Yeah.
ongoing
Yeah.
thing.
Right. I mean, Elaine and I were talking earlier, and we said just that about kind of one shots was because we had all, including Emily, had played in a Diamond Head
Right.
one shot from the group in our Discord that we have, and yeah, we were just kind of saying, well, what else can you really do there other than combat? I mean, obviously, Dungeons and Dragons is a combat system. That's what it is, right? Like that's where all the rules are, is for combat.
Yeah.
So what else can you do other than have a dungeon crawl? Really, it's hard to incorporate meaningful role play with characters that don't really know each other or really have spotty histories with each other.
I guess that's where like the puzzly ones kind of come into place, like the pep shot a little bit.
Yeah.
And then even like the stitchling thing, like there's puzzly sort of aspects, right? And
Yeah.
looting.
But I mean, too much of one is always bad.
It was a real throwback adventure. Like, it was a real throwback AD&D adventure because so much Dungeons and Dragons now is more roleplay-y. Like, the dungeon crawl isn't really... I mean, there are still a lot of people who do it. There's still a lot of modules that are set that way. And like you said, it is a combat system at its heart. But, like, RPGs have changed a lot. I mean, in my day, RPGs were much different. I mean, it was, like, much more combat focused. I remember the first time I started playing role-playing games again, after having not for a really long time and being really discombobulated because I was like, we are not walking through a dungeon stabbing lizards. What is happening here?
Right.
And it took a while. It takes a while. So I think it also is kind of interesting that this is such a it is a really deadly module in a lot of respects, obviously, but at the same point it's kind of a real throwback. So it's sort of like tough.
I think it would be really, really challenging. I wouldn't want to try and take on the challenge of making a one shot or a very short campaign that is largely story based, because when you're role playing and it's primarily relying on story and exploration is what often happens with that, there's so many different directions the party can go. And so, like, how do you wrap that up in a conclusion in a short amount of time with all the different variables that could come into play based on the unpredictability of your party? So, like, you kind of, if you want it to be very story heavy, you kind of have to railroad people to make that work for a one shot, I would think.
Okay, but here's the difference. So, one, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this module that we ran through. If it's going to be combat heavy, you just up front say to your players, guess what? This is what we're going to play, but it's combat heavy. But the difference is with this particular module, every single encounter we had could not have ended as a social encounter. It was designed to end in combat. So there was no alternative for our characters to even explore. We tried to speak to Lucy. She's pedal, pedal, pedal.
She lashes
We
out,
tried to charm one of the other ones. Like, they're there for us to defeat via combat. There wasn't a choice
defeat
for
or
us.
leave alone. Yeah.
Or
like
leave
with
alone,
Lucy, you
sure.
left her alone.
But that's not a resolution, right?
I think that's
No.
kind of the way these things sort of have to happen, really. I think it would be very challenging to do it alternative way.
Well, you
alternatively.
have to design it from the ground up to give an alternative. Obviously, the way this was designed is what I'm saying. That, like, in the context of this funhouse, these adult versions ripped from the children for their exact purpose that they're placed in this funhouse for. There is no way that it makes sense that we could go about it in a different way. So it's really from the core. Like, you can't just start with a combat centric and turn it into something else. You need to have both in mind if you're going to design it that way, I think.
And I sort of the point I was trying to make is that, like, I wouldn't want to try and tackle the task of creating a homebrew one shot or even just very, very short campaign that was intended to be light on combat and very story driven, because it would be really hard to make sure that it can be wrapped up in a short amount of time, right? Because you don't, when it's not combat, there's so many different directions you can go in social situations. So
But when you have the idea, like, the only thing I've ever created was that Christmas one shot.
yeah.
Like, you're going, the end, from the very beginning, the Rat King stole Santa, you're going to fight the Rat King. From there, depending on what the characters do, they could fight this, they could not. There's a lot of role-playing that happened because there's, like, this world that sort of everyone already knew and related to, right? Like, this Christmas, the North Pole.
Yeah, and you had a pretty closed-in world, though. With
Yes,
what we couldn't
true.
go on an offshoot over
Sure,
that
you
way.
go that way, like, I'm screwed. But
And that's sort of, I
You have
guess,
to
the
throw up
point I'm
walls.
making.
you throw up...
Yeah. I can speak to this a little bit because I do run games for a comic book shop locally. So I just started doing that. They happen to be like middle school kids, so there's a little bit more, that you can. They need to be railroaded a little bit more. But like the first two adventures I've done were more role play heavy. I mean, they're like 4 sessions, so like 4 sessions, 2 hours, so like longer than what we did, but a little mini campaign. And these kids, I tried to get them to fight, and like everything was trying to talk their way out of it and investigate, and like I was totally floored because it is not what I was told about these kids. But I think you have to go in with that in mind, and then you do have to do things like you do have to. I would call it soft railroading. Like, I put them on an island, so there is only so far they could go off the rails.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And then as a DM, I think at that point you have to be at your most adaptable, because I have to be ready for anything they do. And this is I try and approach my any campaign, anything that I run this way anyway, because I know, as a player and from experience as a DM, the people will just kind of go do whatever you want. Like you can play. No campaign meets first contact with your players. I mean, they're just going to go and do whatever they're going to do, and you have to adapt. But like with these sort of one shots, I think the shorter you want to do, if it's like, hey, we're going to do a 3-hour session, then it is going to have to be more combat heavy, or it's going to have to be far more directed. I think if you have a short campaign or a short adventure, like if you have it over several days, you can do a little bit more, have a little more flexibility in what you want to do. But I think, like you were just saying, if you have a concept going in, then you have a much better time of doing it. I think it kind of all depends. It depends on the party too. Like if you have a party that's a bunch of chatterboxes, who look a lot like me because I'm a chatterbox, you know that you're going to have a lot more talky talk.
Dude, our Incorrigible party is like how many episodes of roleplay and how many of combat? Like
I wasn't going to say, but I'm going to say. But that's, and like, and then I've had groups that have just wanted to stab things.
Yeah.
Like repeatedly and endlessly. Like to the point where it's uncomfortable.
That's what Leland was bringing up, like, I guess, like, our Diamond Head adventure. We're comparing, Bill and I at least, to, like, very limited experience where there's a lot of role play. And, so yeah, it's interesting to be even in Happy Jack as well. It's how it's constructed, like you're saying, Leland. I guess I don't, as someone who doesn't DM a lot, I don't think about that. Like, okay, what was their core concept and what did they build around? Like, you probably already, like, noticed that.
What you do is you get a bunch of bullet points of things you want to make sure you have story driven. And then as the characters are going through, whatever door they open up, if you need to get some information to them, that's where they find that book. That's where they find that key they're going to need. And if they passed up 3 rooms where the key was that they need to get, they find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's the module, sort of the casement of the game. And then you verify it. You make modifications.
So we missed all those closets, but if they were integral to something, like, you could make it appear somewhere else. Like,
you could find it somewhere else, and yeah, exactly.
I would have given you what you needed. Yeah,
it's interesting though about, like, the characters having no roleplay resolution though. It's like an ignore or fight, sort of. At least like with the Peloton girl, right? That is interesting to think about. I didn't really think about that.
Which there's nothing wrong with.
Well, I mean, the module is what the module is. Everyone's on board with what the module is, and have at her if you're going to enjoy it. But I mean, I think sometimes a social encounter can take far less time than a combat encounter because of the way combat's run. I mean,
that's true.
That final episode, unedited, that was like an hour 40 minutes of recording time, and it pared down to an hour.
Right.
Because it was majority of combat.
Yeah.
Where you could have a 30-minute social encounter and a 2-hour combat and come to the same different or similar conclusions, possibly, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know. I think I agree, Bill. That's incredibly difficult to build as a one shot. If you're aiming for like 4 hours, it's a difficult thing to judge as far as timing goes.
I wouldn't feel up to the task, that's for sure.
I think it's sort of like when you're cooking a meal and you try to get everything to end at the same place, right? So you got to scatter things in, and you got to start the eggs before you start the whatever, and trying to mold all that together. If the combat's taking too long and you need to get it done because your time's going to run out, people run away, right? Or whatever it is to adjust the timing. But that's tough. That's a skill for sure.
This was like so enjoyable, Emily, though, because I could tell that you were enjoying yourself and like knew what you're doing, which like helps to know that you're not like stressing out. Just like as a friend, right?
All the preparation really paid off, I think, because like you said, I was more comfortable with this one because I knew the answers, and I'm not a think on my feet kind of person. I'm not good at that. I disagree. I need planning. Well, no, I mean,
How many times has Shakara yelled spontaneously and perfectly?
That's different.
That's because she's yelling at me.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And since we're so used to that, it's like natural.
So we do have some questions, if we're
right.
ready for that.
Sure, yeah.
Just a couple. Britt on Discord asks, what did you like and not like about your character? More specifically, how you felt your character was suited to this adventure.
I'll go. I took an artificer for the first time because I've never played one before, with the hopes, like I said earlier, I wanted to do more things like build trinkets and and do that kind of thing. And I didn't really do it any justice because I just got caught up in the moment of the game. And I didn't use a lot of that. But so I would like to continue to try an artificer in another way. But I don't think Pippi was really any different than, a regular character. I don't think I got to experience what I was looking for. That's my fault, not the module or the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool artificer subclasses now, especially since the class first came out. Like, artificers seem really interesting, and like you can take them in a lot of different directions now. I mean, yes, many of them are predominantly combat based, like the artillerist or the what's the one with the armor? I don't know. There's one where basically you can be like Iron Man or whatever. You have this crazy suit of armor, and so there's lots of cool and interesting things, and it's more like the artificer is more like Eberron style, like that mix of steampunk and fantasy, or sci-fi-ish fantasy kind of stuff. Which, John, you've said before, you don't actually really like all that much.
I know.
But yeah, I don't really know what else you could have done though as Pippi to try to get more out of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt when we were done and I looked back at it, I was like, oh, I really wanted to do things like this, and this, and do more with the potions, do more with that kind of thing. But the opportunity just didn't present itself where it made sense, or I missed it. I started focusing on popping balloons and not really paying any attention to if I could do something to go up and pop the balloons for us, or whatever.
Yeah.
I kind of too with you, John. I actually really enjoyed playing Belric, so much so that I weaved him and 3 other people exactly like him into a campaign that I was running because I was just having too much fun. But there are a couple things that a Runic Knight can do, which I think would have been useful to kind of throw in there. Like there's a cloud rune where you can, if somebody within 30 feet of you gets hit by an attack, you can use your reaction to choose a different creature other than the attacker to become the target of the attack, which would have ended up badly for the kids maybe, but could have been useful in that last fight. So there's stuff like that would be fun to explore. But it's a kind of a fun little class. So I enjoyed it, and I thought he worked pretty well in this, and I enjoyed the Funhouse mirror disappointment of not being big briefly. It was great. So yeah, it was fun.
I learned in a previous one shot that the very first time I DM'd, I co-DM'd. John helped me, and the only reason it wasn't a TPK was because John convinced me to not. John's like, you might not want to do that.
Well, she was brutal. I mean, she was out to kill.
There were traps in that one as well, and they went off, and they went off, and they went off, and they went off, and it is better that a trap goes off once. But that's why traps for me, forever only go off once.
Right. So let me ask you, and I'm going to hazard a guess here and say that eventually we all got advantage going through those tunnels. That's not part of the module, is it?
No.
Yeah, that was smart. Because we suck.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very smart. And I think that plays in exactly what you're talking about as far as the traps triggering once and then they're done.
Yeah, can't think on your feet, my butt.
Very good decision, yeah. Very good decision.
I felt you guys were getting frustrated with all that, and I thought I can't.
You did it for John. Don't lie.
So this one shot would have been, remember we all went down in that tunnel and we all died?
And died.
Spun around. And
we bludgeoned ourselves to death in a spinning tunnel.
5 corpses slowly spinning down this tunnel until they come out the other end.
I mean, we know Booch would just be in his shell, just rocking and just waiting for it.
Rocking and rolling. Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Fermenting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's just another piece of what am I trying to say here? It's another example of you doing an excellent job DMing this, is sort of reading the room and tweaking things as needed so that it's an enjoyable experience for all of us. And I think it really paid off, because you could tell when we were, there's the potential for us to get frustrated, and you tweaked things as needed to still make it challenging, but not like we're just pounding our heads against a wall.
Well, and you used the system of advantage and disadvantage perfectly within Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, because you made it, I mean, I think that's part of that design too is you made it so it nearly became trivial, but it wasn't something that was completely dismissed, which was perfect. So it was a great choice. I think that was very well done. And like, again, I completely agree with you, Bill. It's something small. That's something very minor, but it's hugely impactful for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Anyone else want to talk about their character?
What do you like and not like, and specifically how you felt the character was suited to this
How
adventure?
it was suited. Sure.
I kind of the reason I originally made Booch, which was a long time ago,
You made
was 'cause
Booch?
I was always interested in.
This has been discussed on mic.
Leland, you can edit that out, right?
He can.
He won't.
I distinctly remember hearing me say, Leland edited that out during this one shot.
Yeah.
In the finished play, yeah.
Leland's like me. If you give us good stuff, you're screwed.
Exactly. It's it. What I did edit out in that instance was me saying nope.
Classic editor.
So when
Anyway.
Elena and Jessica create a Booch,
Oh, shush. So,
When Booch was created,
when Booch was created by me and me alone, I wanted to be a druid. Well, I think. Anyway, I had talked about wanting to be a druid, so that's partly why Booch was created the way he was created, whether it was me who created him or other people. Anyway, long story short, I wanted to.
Is it?
is it? I don't
Well, not at this point, it ain't.
Thank God you're the
We
one who
haven't
said
got to the
that.
story part yet.
Listen. Anytime Bill speaks, put it on 2 times. You'll listen faster. It's fine.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of really druidy stuff with Booch as far as like wild shape and that sort of thing, which is partly what I envisioned would be interesting about a druid, and I really haven't.
Do you
leaned
think that's
into
because
that
you
too
didn't
much.
choose to, though? You could have.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think in the moment I just often don't choose to do that for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that though, because specifically the Spore Druid is the most different type of druid of all of the druid subclasses.
Right. Yeah.
It is when in the design of that subclass specifically designed to be a drastic departure from the standard druid with the way you use your spores, and you can druid shape and get your super sport thing, right? So the spore druid itself is just incredibly different than a standard druid, what you may have as that picture in your mind.
Yeah.
So I think that also plays a lot into the experience you had with that subclass.
Right, and that's probably is a big factor as to why my experience was the way it was. Just like you're saying, it's not really built to be the stereotypical druid where you're turning into an animal. But otherwise, honestly, I have a blast every time I played Booch. I think he's a really fun character for me to play.
do you wish he was less clumsy?
Yeah, but honestly, that's funny. Like, it can get frustrating if you just like can't get past a certain obstacle, but if you can eventually make it past, I don't mind that. I don't mind some stumbles and taking some damage from being a klutz.
I think it's good to have a character flaw to play off of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I wouldn't change much of anything, I don't think, about bringing Booch into this.
It's also good to have and know that the person running the game will not abuse the flaw of
True.
that character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
And playing with Emily, we all know we can give our characters those flaws and know we won't be heavily penalized in the gameplay. Again, back to this advantage that we're getting, and once we're used to these tunnels and getting our feet underneath us. So just again, it's just more credence to Emily's skills, quickly growing skills running the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
How did you create your character, Andrew? Like, what led you to choose what you chose?
So, oh man, so there was a discussion in a Sunday game I was in about the Runic Knight addendum. So a friend of mine plays a character who is basically he's a pro wrestler who's a wizard.
Cool.
The only reason he's a wizard is so he can like enhance his pro wrestling. Like, so like he knows like fly and like enlarge, like very small things.
Okay.
And Chesky, who DMs Wizards and Lizards, said to our friend Tim, there is no way in hell I'm ever letting you turn Vacon, this character, into a runic knight, because that would just be a nightmare. And as I looked into what that was, I was like, oh, it's like all of these runes. Like you could, like all of these different effects. And then for some reason, like I got it in my head, hey, it would be really funny to have a small character who wanted to be really big. And so from there, it was kind of Big Belric. And then it was a matter of like, just kind of trying to see how I wanted to design a character that was going to be able to do that. Like, and not, like at one point, it is a one-note joke. So it is, funny kind of once. But like, how would I be able to run with it so that that he could be like actually effective as well? So, but yeah, I kind of came up with the, like, once I heard about the whole Rune Knight thing, I was like, so wait, you get big? Oh, well, I mean, here's the obvious.
How do the
joke.
runes work? Like, could we, you know what I mean? Like, could you have done something with the ladders with runes?
No,
Runes?
I mean, at least not at this level. I haven't looked at the really high level stuff. But you have specific ruins. Wow, I
I don't know how to say it
just
either.
like in the podcast, ruins that ruin my ruins. There are like 4 or 5 choices you can make for runes, like so, and each sort of echoes a different quote unquote skill from a giant. So like there are a couple that redirect damage or attacks. There's the fire shackles thing. There's a couple of interesting things. What's kind of funny is that the giant's might, the grow big part of Belric, isn't actually, as far as I understand in the description, like based on a rune. You just learned how to do it.
Huh.
Because you're aping all of these giant things, so you also learned how to get big.
So if you were in the fight with Happy Jack at the end, you would have got how big?
I mean, I think you, let's see. You become large. So I would have become large sized.
You could eat some kids and get some.
Yeah, how big is large?
I could have.
10 by 10. 10 by 10 square on a grid is
Frick.
a large size creature.
I would say somewhere probably between 8 and 9 feet, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Like,
so. Probably.
Sounds
Because I
about
think
Like 4 times as tall as.
yeah,
That's
usually
crazy.
is.
sort of a stacking a bunch of halflings in.
That's right.
overcoat.
You're 3 halflings in trench coats.
I think Belric would have probably gotten large and then like stood over the kids after you knocked them out.
Dang.
Especially once he saw someone get eaten.
Okay,
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
after
yeah.
I knocked them out, like I'm trying to like save them from trauma.
I thought it was brilliant.
I mean, I guess this goes into my answer. My answer is that Pam is super suited for this thing, but she unknowingly did bad things too.
It wouldn't have changed anything because
Okay.
the kids were crowding around Jack. They were doing that themselves. It wasn't like he was holding them there. They were crowding
and they
around
didn't
him.
care.
No,
I mean, they were all in on Jack, so him
Right.
eating them would have been like whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought it was a good move.
I've always wanted to be a ring ding. Yeah.
Anytime Jacques is in the one shot, Pam is perfectly suited for the one shot. Because Pam and Jacques are a pair. But
They're a pretty good duo.
I mean, missing children and stuff as far as like conceptually, like that was right up Pam's alley as well. I do think like whenever I'm done playing Pam, I'm like, do I come across enough as a bard? Like I don't know. I don't seem super charismatic. I'm not really ever singing. I probably should sing more. I don't know. I don't feel
It depends
super
on
bardy, but
depends on what kind of bard you want to play, right? And you were throwing bardic inspiration around
yeah,
for
I
quite a
had
while
vicious
too.
mockeries lined up.
Vicious mockery, like so you had the good one-liners, you had the.
But like when
you
I
had the
created
inspirational
Pam, I
quotes.
guess I had a whole list of like 90s pop songs I was gonna quote, and I've like not done that ever. But I was like trying to be like, because that's when my kids were growing up, so I thought the Spice Girls were super cool. So like I know all their songs, you know. Like anyway, if you wanna be my lover. But yeah, that was fun. I liked playing Pam. I would like to resurrect Pyra at some point, because I like speaking like Pyra.
Do all of your names like have an emphasis on it? So Pam
Pyra.
and then Pyra.
I don't know. Pyra's an old fire genasi.
Yeah. Leland, what do you like and not like?
Well, I mean, Jacques being a rogue fighter, wizard, ranger, monk is suited for any situation. So
Of course.
obviously he's perfect no matter where you slot him in. And there's nothing that I dislike about Jacques. He came in, he did what he does, he whipped. I mean, I crit twice, I think, back-to-back whip shots in one of the episodes. He came in, he whipped, he conquered, he left feeling pretty good about himself. So that's a win.
I should introduce Jacques to my friend Tim's wrestling wizard.
Yeah,
Vacon.
dude.
I think they would be awesome. I think they should be they would be a great tag
Jacques
team
on the
duo.
ropes with his whips.
How do you explain little Jacques not having a French accent?
Ooh.
Well, I mean, that's not something that we have the time to get into right now.
Oh gosh.
Maybe another one shot.
That's what you say when you don't have paragraphs of backstory written.
We don't have time to get into it right now. Is code for.
Emily can't do a
there's no
French
way to-
accent.
Oh, wait. Can you give it a try? Give it a try. Let's go.
Nope.
I honestly think that Happy Jack is just a future version of Jacques. I think that's what ultimately is the actual answer.
Oh gosh.
Mm.
Okay. No. Pam doesn't want that. Oh gosh. You just have to say everything getting higher every time. I don't ever want to go to a funhouse, honestly, ever. In real life.
I'm not sure I've ever liked fun houses, to be honest. I've gone through a few of them and thought to myself, this isn't for me. Although I do like those things that pop up around Halloween.
Haunted houses?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Those
That's the word.
things.
That would be fun to do as a one-shot, a haunted house.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Emily, look into
mean,
it. You would be great at it.
potentially like almost reskin Happy Jack's layout-ish, right? Like it would need to be something as massive as that, really.
Like, someone should do a one-shot of a haunted house where, like, you literally don't stop setting off traps and you just let people die. But they can come back as a ghost monster that haunts the other players,
Yeah.
becoming part of the haunted house.
I was kind of curious if there was some of this that was inspired by It,
I wonder that too. I don't know. It didn't say anything.
which is fine. I have a whole host of adventures and one shots that I put together that are all inspired. All of them are inspired by various movies, specifically horror movies. So I'm down with that. I mean, I think film and TV and stories like novels are great fodder for turning, a little nugget of that into a larger adventure. Especially when they're not actually like, oh, I'm just going to redo Lord of the Rings. Like, if they're non-fantasy related, that's a lot of fun. But I'm kind
Yeah.
of curious.
I think it would be fantastic playing a longer form mini campaign in an entire town that's being warped by Happy Jack, a la It. That could be something that's blown up and expanded quite nicely into this quiet little town that's being just tormented, or a section of the population only that's being tormented. The kids or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever way you want to take
Dude,
it.
I'm
Just
down to
tormented
be
by
in a
this
horror
entity.
one-shot. Let's do this.
There are some really good
Let's go.
kernels of narrative and story underpinning this adventure, right? Like I think you really could expound upon it and
We have to record it at night by candlelight.
Yeah, there you go. The carnival itself just could have been like one part of that, right? Like this would have been
Yeah.
one section of the
Yeah.
town,
Right.
and it could have been the finale to that whole thing, maybe too, right?
People
With-
come
and
out of the
with
haunted house changed and different and strange with different...
Different accents. That's what happened with Jacques.
Oh no!
It's the accent changing machine.
different ages. They come out of the haunted house and their age is randomized.
Yeah, like each section of town could be like a different horror theme.
You go in with a friend and you come
Yeah.
out trapped in a different friend's body. Your personalities are all switched up with your bodies.
Freaky
Like
Friday.
Freaky Friday, and you gotta like kiss your mom because you're now your dad, and
Ew, Jesus.
Oh.
That's a
Oh.
concern.
That
Leave
That
it
took
to
a
me.
left.
Leave it to
That
me.
took a hard left.
So if we don't have anything else constructive to say,
Well,
I just
with
had
the
to
new
make it weird.
Ravenloft book that came out, you could have a section of the town, like Andrew's saying, a different type of horror. Like that book has a lot of the different types of horror outlined and how to like build an adventure with them and stuff like that. Something you could easily do if you really wanted to. That isn't like Barovia or all that shit.
Is it like the dream where your teeth keep falling out, but real life?
Yeah,
That would be
but
scary.
real life exactly.
All wear hippos all the time.
Yeah, where hippos are roaming free.
That actually, in retrospect, might have been my favorite actual thing in the entire book.
The where hippos.
And I loved it, and I had a great time, and I thought it was fantastic, and I can't thank you guys enough for having me on, too, but, like, the were-hippo, like, now that I know that it was a were-hippo, like, I thought probably before, and now I know for sure, I'm like, that is brilliant.
What about when Happy Jack went, yum? I just want that to be the alert for the Incorrigible party when you stream, Emily. Yum!
Oh my goodness.
that would get old quick.
Eating all our followers. Yeah, thanks for coming on. That was really fun.
Yeah.
It was good to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
I think guest players on one shot is really the way to go. Having getting to play with different people on the show, I think.
It's a lot easier than trying to fit them into the main story.
I haven't not enjoyed any time we've had someone on in the main campaign. I think it's always turned out well, but I appreciate that it's very challenging. So I think one shots are a great opportunity to get to play with new people.
Yeah, I think it's tough because you don't want to make it mean too much, but also you don't want it to be meaningless. Like, you don't want, like, someone to come in and be a bartender, you know,
right.
but you also don't want to
Hey.
be like, hey, it's the head guard of, this castle. It seems important, and then we never see that person
Listen, the
again.
guards
So,
and the
that's tough.
bartenders alike, NPCs in Aspire are very important,
Some of them.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Hefe,
Bonacor
That's
was a
Chucky,
was
come on,
sort of
like-
like a bartender, but
Traveling
Leland
bartender.
did a good job of weaving him into the
we got
lore
Roland
of Aspara.
guarding the walls.
Okay, I did not mean to disrespect bartenders.
No.
As long as we can make a 377, that's what's important.
737? 777?
377.
377. Oh, I always say the airplane
that's what's
names
important.
instead. I'm so confused.
The Boeing 377.
So, Andrew, yes, thank you very much for joining us. If you want to plug.
Oh, we're
Yes.
talking plugs now?
Where can we find you? Where can we hear you? What do you do?
What do I do? Nonsense. It's all nonsense. Yeah, so I am part of an actual play podcast called Wizards and Lizards. We will be launching our next season in the next week or so. So probably by the time this comes out, the first episode will be live. And we had the fantastic idea of splitting up the party and running in different directions, which I know you guys are familiar with. So I'm editing that together, which is giving me a headache, which I'm sure Leland is familiar with. So you can find us at wizardsandlizardspodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter at wizards_lizards, Instagram, Wizards and Lizards Podcast. And you can find me personally talking all sorts of nerdy nonsense at Andrew_Garda, Garda. And I think that's all of us. It's fun, though. It's a homebrew world. As I talked about last time, that is all information is controlled by the library, which is actually more scary than it sounds because it turns out they like to kill people on occasion, and us in particular. So my character's name is Gray. He is a shifter, so he's like kind of turns part wolf and a ranger, and he hunts fiends, and he's a little full of himself. And there's something going on with him. He's not quite right, and we're gonna delve into that sometime very soon. So that'll be fun, and we've got an air genasi, and we've got a half elf rogue, and a combination paladin / ranger, and a very, very old bard named Virgil, who he and Pam would probably get along really well. But thanks for having me on. This is a blast. I love the show. So it's really fun to be able to play in your sandbox.
I'm excited for season 2 because I want to like have a good starting point to like really. I was listening to your
Exactly,
one
yeah.
shot and like everyone playing the different characters for me. Like I didn't know who you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I mean, it works if you don't know, but it works more if you do
Yeah.
know.
That was,
and,
that
you know,
was interesting.
And speaking of like the things you could do with one shots, like that one, like I just was able to go completely ham. So
it was
that's
good.
the nice thing
I
about
still
one
really
shots.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. So I will. You definitely follow me. I will talk about it in my editing process and complaining about Audacity. So
All right, thank you very much.
thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. This was a ton of fun. It was great to get to know you a little bit more.
Anytime, and you guys can also always hit me up. And I have threatened John and Emily that I'm going to stop by their house at some point and play all of
Yep.
their games.
Yep.
You guys don't have to be involved. Like
Oh.
I'll just be in
No.
your house, but you know,
If
That's all right.
somebody's playing games, I'm gonna be there.
there you go. Well, now that I know that like the some of the Canadian portion of the show is not that far away.
We're just a border away, though. Is the
That's
issue.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now that border is tall.
Yeah.
Hopefully not for too much longer.
Well,
I've been John and Pippi.
I have been Emily.
I'm
and-
Leland Steele.
No.
I played Sean.
What?
Well, you're the DM.
DM.
You're the end. You're at the end.
oh right, okay, right. So really, that
I
was
take
my
Emily's
cue.
spot.
Oh, okay.
Smooth
Wait,
as...
does this mean I get to say happy adventuring? then?
Wait.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Leland.
Man, I
do it
thought I
again.
was going to be the one to screw this up. So
Oh no, that's why I let you go first, just because I knew who to
Okay, let's restart. We know the order now.
No.
There's no
No.
restarting.
Bill, go. Who's next? Bill.
It's usually me, and I am not going to
Okay.
go until we restart.
No.
She's
I've
holding
been
the show
Bill, and I
hostage.
played Booch.
Okay, fine. I'm Elena, and I played Pam.
And I'm Emily, and I was the boss.
Yep.
Happy adventuring! So when we do those little previews, and we were talking about the pig, my mom, who follows me on Twitter but does not listen to the podcast, messaged me privately and said, "Miss something, where do you keep your pig?"
You have a pig. Yeah.
So I had to explain about all that, and she's just like, "Okay."
Remember how I tell you to listen to my podcast, and you always say, "Uh-huh."
It's all right. My mom doesn't listen either.
I think that's their job. Although I will say, I think my parents actually listened to our podcast briefly, but I could tell the moment that they stopped because they got confused with technology, because all of a sudden I would say something and they'd be like, doing exactly what we were just all talking about doing. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yes.
it sounds good. I'm like, you're not listening.